He is known by many names: Kris Kringle, Saint Nicholas, Grandfather Frost, Wine Horsemen, Babbo Natale, Papa Noel, Santa Claus, Santa, Father Christmas. Whatever moniker you know him by, and whatever legends you have heard, one similarity across them all is that of a benevolent soul who brings joy to the children of the world. In some of these stories, he is a plump and jolly old elf, while in others he is a kind and generous man of the cloth. In other much older tales, he is a spirit of nature, friend to the goodly creatures large and small. There is great magic in these stories. It is a fantastical magic, like the spectacle of reindeer who can fly, and toy factories hidden in the northernmost part of the world. Beyond these miraculous tales, however, there is also a very real magic in the holiday season. It is the power of giving, for Santa Claus is the spirit of generosity, and all who believe in his lessons and do good in his name help spread the magic of Father Christmas. Greetings, fanboys and fangirls, and Merry Christmas, one and all. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk to you here as we are closing in on the Christmas season. And as you can see, I've created a funny little Christmas diorama for us as we celebrate with a few choice videos coming in the next few days. So I'm very excited to get around to those. Of course, this year we will be starting with a little Christmas card that I received much like last year around this time. And let's just have a look. And well, what do you know? It's from Father Christmas. And sure enough, I didn't write in it because I'm a weirdo collector that doesn't want to mess it up. So you can see Father Christmas on the back. This is from Horsemen Studios. And so I'm very excited. And of course, that's our figure today, Father Christmas. So let's go ahead and look at the figure. But before we begin, be sure to subscribe and like the video. It really does help us out. And of course, comment at the end when the video is done. Now, this is from the Figura Obscura line, just like Krampus over here from last year, and it's kind of their holiday-themed releases from the Four Horsemen. So I'm really excited to see if it lives up to that same level of quality. As you can see from the box here, it is vacuum sealed and plastic, which is a great touch and is a very easy way to tell if your figure has been opened or anything like that. We have an excellent image of a Christmas tree on the side. On the other side, we have a buck, and on the back, we have a little bio all about Father Christmas with the same artwork we saw on the back of the card. And before moving on, I do have to comment that this is one of the most lovely bios I think I've ever read on a figure. I don't think I could have encapsulated the legend of Santa Claus any better. You know, it's kind of funny. Sometimes I find myself on this channel reviewing lots of monsters and occult detectives and shady figures, but it is genuinely nice to read something so benevolent on the back of one of these boxes. The Four Horsemen made no attempt to give Santa some kind of edge or make him more cool to be a figure. They just presented him as exactly what he should be, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. This was sold for a limited amount of time on storehorsemen.com. They made quite a few of these to try and answer the demand that they saw last year with Krampus, who was a very hot item. And I'm glad that they made so many because you had a very decent window of time to get this guy, probably 3 or 4 days where you could get Father Christmas here. And I think that's great. That's the way it should be. So these figures actually open with a magnetic clasp, and there he is, Father Christmas. And he looks great in the packaging. If we move down just a little, we can actually see that he has his moniker there, and everything is looking very nice. So just like with Krampus, you can actually remove this part, and you're left with this really nice holiday diorama. And so it's just kind of a fold-out thing that can just set in the background. And one little additional detail is on the back of the box that comes out of the display. You can actually see Father Christmas back there with his sleigh of reindeer and the village in the North Pole. And simply because the Four Horsemen love us this much, they also give us another background right behind the figure in the box. So this is great. You get practically everything you need in the box. Just to give you a general idea of the contents of the box, you can see that we have an accessory tray with his staff and different headgear and sack and a stand for his tree. Then we have the main figure tray itself, which comes with a Christmas tree, a few accessories, as well as the figure itself. And here he is out of the packaging and all set up, Father Christmas. So I'm really excited to tell you all about this guy, and let's get right into it. So let's go ahead and talk just a little bit about some of the Four Horsemen's artistic decisions with this figure. For one thing, this figure relies a great deal on soft goods, as is obvious, I think, just by looking at it. So we'll definitely be giving a lot of consideration to how successful or unsuccessful those are. And of course, we'll be giving a great amount of consideration, as usual, to the sculpt. First of all, it might be a little easier without his staff. First of all, it's hard not to acknowledge that this is just a really intricate figure. There's going to be a lot more to discuss than there usually are in these sorts of reviews, because there's just a lot of complexity with what we're looking at. So bear with me as we try to take our time and really take in a lot of what makes this figure special. Of course, first things first is we have Santa's soft goods outfit. And as I had said, there's just so much of the soft goods that I think it's very important to kind of give it its due and give it its consideration. So that we can look at it very closely, we'll take out some of the accessories. All right, and taking off some of like the hanging accessories that we had, this is pretty much the basic Santa Claus, Father Christmas kind of outfit right here. First of all, it's very epic looking, almost as if Santa Claus is a wizard from the mountains or some kind of mythical figure, wizard, Obi-Wan Kenobi type. And I have a feeling that's very much what the Horsemen were going for with this figure. I mean, just looking, you can see that there's just so much of like a wizard's robe here, almost like a mountain man kind of costume. It's very elaborate. Not only do we have just this kind of mysterious aura about him, an almost kind of mythical aura, but you can actually see that the soft goods aren't your basic everyday kind of action figure implement that you would most certainly see. One of the things that you'll notice right away is there's a lot more care taken with the actual sewing of these kinds of goods, and usually you would only find that kind of care taken with a more premium priced figure than this, because it's very important we keep this in perspective. This is a 1/12 scaled figure, and it was about $60. You look at other companies that are doing this scale with this level of soft goods implementation, and you're looking at $100 at least for one figure. So that's certainly something that has to be considered as we go. The other thing is the level here of soft goods implementation. And so as you can see, the tailoring is really nice on the figure. You have the hood and shoulder cape piece up here. That's a different piece. We'll look at it later. You have the overcoat, and then under it you have this kind of purple robe. There's functioning pockets on the front. You could see earlier where I had like the little gifts stowed away in those pockets. And there's even a sculpted kind of satchel that we'll look at here in a little while, full of toys. The soft goods themselves are incredibly complex because you also have this going on, which is like this extra kind of design with the black and the gold tailored in throughout. And I think that's very impressive. Not only is it there, it's also on the sleeves, it's on the front of the robe, it's at the bottom and goes all the way around as well. That combined with more of the velvety nature of the red, and it just ends up feeling even more premium than a $60 specialty figure might suggest. Like I said, this typically isn't the level that you could usually get with a figure in this range, especially in the modern era, like considering for inflation and all of that. Just having a look at how things are constructed, there is wiring right here along the hood. There's wiring on the shoulder cape so that you can kind of sculpt it to your needs. There is wiring in the sleeves of the big coat. There's wiring down the front. There's wiring down the bottom. Well, I'll just go ahead and say it. It really brings a lot of companies' offerings to shame when it comes to the level and the amount of wiring that is actually present here. The Horsemen have included so much. Every possible area that you could imagine has been wired, and there's not been any limitations to the wiring. It's not like they just do one part and leave another part unwired. It is fully wired. Every element of the coat, all of that is pretty much at your disposal for your own kind of posing. I always say that wiring is meant to help you simulate gravity. to make something appear heavier than it really is. With any of these soft goods, that's the trick. In 6 scale or 3 3/4 scale, whatever it is, especially in 3 3/4 scale, oh, that's a nightmare. The trick is that this stuff isn't as heavy as it is when it's larger, so it's not going to look quite right. So you take like a sleeve like this, if you don't have wiring, you can't do a lot with it. But with wiring around the sleeve, you can kind of sculpt it to the wrist like you just saw me do, and you can simulate that hanging. So when it comes to, same with the shoulder, how it's kind of went a little wild here, just use the wire, sculpt it down, and all of a sudden you simulated the gravity a little bit better for the situation. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but that's really what we're doing. And of course, you know, when you've got photography and you have poses and you want to make things look more epic and you want things to be flowing or affected by wind, this is the way you do it. Now check this out. The hood, you're able to put it down. As you can see, I'm just able to fold it and it stays because of that wiring. And just due to that wire, you can make it look a lot better like that. And so I am really impressed that you're able to do that. For that reason, I'm just going to keep this shoulder cape on, but I will show you how it works. If you take this head off, you can see that there's just a little clasp here, and you just apply that to the figure and you just lay it over. I will show you how it looks without it. I don't think it's anything to write home about necessarily without it, but you know, maybe if he's in an indoor environment and he's a little more casual, maybe this is how Father Christmas is going to look. In the end, it's more than fair to say that the soft goods implementation is done to a very high standard. So now that we've looked at soft goods, we definitely need to look at sculpted elements of the figure. It's very easy to get overwhelmed by the soft goods and the intricacies of it here and kind of let that take your eye off the work that the sculpts are doing, but they are definitely worth talking about. Of course, this figure comes with 2 heads, and we will go over each one. Ever since I was just a kid, I've been really fascinated by the more serious kind of old paintings and things, and the older interpretations of Santa Claus. I remember when I was a kid, I would see old art, and it would instantly kind of draw me to it, because I could tell a couple of things about Santa Claus, Father Christmas, whatever you want to say. For one, I could always tell that he was portrayed as being a lot more thin. The beard was a lot longer. He often looked extremely serious. I began to understand that this was an old legend, and that the old world version in the story was a lot less Coca-Cola and a lot more folklore. And that's definitely what I think this head brings. I especially like that the Horsemen were very careful to choose what I would consider to be a very serious and stoic head sculpt. It is almost sad, kind of, you know, eyebrows arched, you know, upwards. It's definitely a lot more serious. I actually like that quite a bit. I think that it would have stolen some of the authenticity. It would have stolen some of the artistic intent away from this figure had they went with kind of a goofy grin. Not that there would have been anything wrong with it, but I just think this was an opportunity to do something a little more true to the folklore of Santa. I think this was the right decision. I also think the length of the beard being so huge that it actually pretty much covers the belt buckle there, I think that's great, and the huge mustache, really good choices all the way around. I also have to commend the Horsemen on the level of paint application going on here. Of course, in modern action figures, one of the biggest pains of them all is eye application. You just never know what you're going to get with mass market figures. And since this is a $60 figure, yes, I can gladly say the paint application lives up to that price point. Since this is, you know, quite a bit more expensive than your standard $20 or $30 figure in the same scale that would be at mass market. I definitely like how they did it. I think the eyebrows are done very well. And what I like is that the eyebrows, the hair, and the beard are all done in gray. And then you have a dry brushing of white. At least that's how I think it's been accomplished all the way around. I especially like that the eyebrows are kind of a darker hue. But again, I'm drawn to the kind of sad eyes of Father Christmas. He is almost weary, you know, he's got a lot on his shoulders kind of feel. And I think it's fascinating. The side profile is also really cool. And it's amazing just how much wrinkling and things is put into Father Christmas's eyes and the cheeks. I think the skin tone and everything with the lining on the forehead gives kind of an ancient feel without going overboard. It is a very lovely thing, I think, that they have done in terms of the detail level. And just to show you, here's the hair along the back. There is one influence I would like to talk about. Of course, we know the Horsemen are sometimes given to different kinds of influences and homages with their figures. And I do have to wonder about this. I'm not sure that it's a real thing or not, but it's purely my speculation. There was an excellent, I mean wonderful movie that does not get enough attention on Netflix. It's an animated film, Klaus, which is this Netflix animated movie, which is just superb. And I think that everybody should watch it. If you haven't, this is the perfect year to do so, especially with your family. And I see a lot of that Santa Claus, that Father Christmas, right here within this head sculpt. I'm not sure if it's intentional. Maybe it's just me equating one of the best versions of the legend, in my opinion, with a great figure. And that's a compliment to everybody involved, whether it's a compliment to the movie people or a compliment to the Horsemen for bringing something near and dear to my heart to me just through this figure. But if you like that movie, if you're a huge fan of it like I am, and you're an animation connoisseur, then this figure is going to be something you're going to be interested in, because it is probably the closest way to own something that's definitely, it has that feel just like the character did in the movie. So I think this is a winner. Before we look at the other head sculpt, definitely take a break and show you some of the other sculpting that we have, like the excellent belt. And you can see that it has like a little back satchel piece. But one of the things that will irritate you as you go is that this likes to come unclasped. It can be really sort of frustrating to keep this thing together. I don't know if that's more of a rare thing and I'm just the lucky guy who got one that doesn't want to stay sometimes, but it's not huge or anything. I've definitely had worse trouble out of, say, like Mezco clasps in this scale, but you know, you just have to kind of put it back together and put a little pressure and then you're good to go. Also, as I said earlier, there are pockets that are completely functional. And some of those, when we look at accessories, we'll look at some of the things that go in those. Moving on down for sculpting, not only is there this purple robe that has kind of, you know, the slits in the side so it doesn't interfere with anything, but you can see that Santa is armored up here. Father Christmas indeed has some Mythic Legions parts going on with an armored loincloth piece, armored pants, kind of mythical looking boots. It's pretty epic to think that Santa is armored up for battle. I'm not 100% sure exactly what kind of chest piece he has going on, because I don't plan on disassembling this figure to find out. You could, I'm sure, and it would be fine. Now on the arms, he has similar things going on. You can see that Father Christmas has these gauntlets, very warrior-like. But what's great is that all of these pieces are kind of slender, sort of small, and I always say that if you're going to use a really large amount of soft goods with your figure, then you have to make sure that your base body and everything is overly slender, because you have to be careful. If you even go just a little too far with how big the body is under it, then everything's going to look too big when you have the soft goods on it. So because Father Christmas should be more of a robust kind of body type, it works out so well to have him in this big bulky coat over more of a slender body. You can still get that kind of thinner frame that I talked about earlier that's more in the lore of Father Christmas and Santa Claus, while also still getting a little added bulk, but nothing looks ridiculous or out of scale. Everything looks nice. So I think that just proportionally, that works out really well to make that artistic call when it comes to Father Christmas. And here is the alternative head that is included with the figure. This is definitely more of a traditional American Santa Claus head. It is not so much to the point that this is like Coca-Cola Santa Claus. If you're looking for that, there's the new Naughty or Nice series that Big Bad Toy Store is doing, which I will also be reviewing this week. You can see that this is just a little more traditional and a little more what you would expect from Santa Claus. Just for comparison, here it is. You can see that not only is the beard different in terms of length, with this being a lot longer and more like those old legends, But even things like the nose is slightly different, with this being more of a long sage, sort of Gandalf-esque look, and this being a shorter nose. It's a little more standard, a little more full. So it's interesting to see these two side by side. The hair is extremely similar, and the other elements of the face are extremely similar. Perhaps this is a little less kind of sad looking and a little more what you might expect. It does surprise me a little bit that they did not include a standard like Santa hat, but that must have been something that they purposely, like intentionally just avoided. And they must have said, okay, well, let's not go down that road. That's not really what we're doing. We're just going with a hood. If you do want to see sort of what that might look like, this came with the holiday Gomez, Christmas Gomez, whatever you want to say. And it's just like a soft goods, wired Santa hat. So that actually looks really nice in my estimation. It's a little darker than the rest of the suit, so you may want to find something a little different. But even if this had been included, I definitely would have been going for the hood look, because I just think it's a little more epic. It's a lot more epic, actually. And it just gives those Father Christmas, Old Man Winter sort of vibes that I like. But, your mileage may vary. Once again, very good paint work on this particular head, just like the other. The only thing is there's a tiny dot where the paint isn't quite as strong right there in the head, which could just look like a blemish or something, but it's not really a big deal. Some of the gloss effect that's being used on the eye is kind of, it might have ran over just a tad onto the bottom under the eye right there, but it's really not noticeable, and that's me being extremely nitpicky. Even though I probably prefer the long bearded head, I still really like this. And if you're looking for a more traditional Santa, this is the way to go. I think they're pretty much equal in terms of just the visual. All right, since we saw the other head so much, I'm going to leave this one on while we talk about accessories. So for accessories, you get several different things. One of them is this cool drum. Most of these accessories are just toys that Father Christmas has with him. This drum has a little clip, and at first I wasn't exactly sure what to do with that clip, but after looking at the website at Store Horsemen, I saw that one of the press photos is it's clipped to the belt. Clip it on, and there you go. He's got it with him to give to some lucky boy or girl. Next up, Santa includes a trumpet. Now, this is cool because you can either use it as a gift, and have him posed up, putting it under the tree or something like that, or he can be blowing the trumpet himself, almost like a warning to all the mean little, I'm kidding, but it's almost like, he's heralding his arrival or something like that to a village. What's great is that this too can be fit right into these usable pockets. You can either fit it in, horn side down or horn side up. I kind of like the horn side up because it makes a little more sense with this thinner region kind of going down into the pocket. This is one of my favorite accessories for whatever reason. It's this tiny little elf toy. It just seems tailor-made to fit right into one of those usable pockets like we were talking about. So I really like the way that this looks stowed in there, and I just think it's a cool visual, but it looks good no matter what you do. One of Father Christmas's coolest accessories is this lantern that he has. It's kind of a candle and a lamp cover maybe. And I think this is just so well done with this excellent kind of frosted plastic glass, if you will. And it's really good to the point where there's actually really good transparency in it. And you can see Father Christmas's eyes right through there. So that's definitely very high quality, with the gold looking so great with the darker crevices that really bring out the details with that wash. And then you have a loop at the top for Father Christmas's shepherd's hook. Of course, this is a beautiful accessory. One of the best things about it is the extreme detail in the wood grain all the way through. This is the kind of thing that the Horsemen have always excelled at, and I love seeing it. Now, one of the best things about this is that the hook right here can then be used to hang the lamp. What you're intended to do with it is take Father Christmas and simply take the shepherd's hook, put it in hand. Now that we've zoomed out just a little, you can see just how impressively large the shepherd's hook really is. Being several inches taller than Father Christmas himself, this is a great addition and adds even more of that sage-like spirit of the forest kind of quality to the character. Father Christmas does come with a Christmas tree. This is very, very, very flexible and posable. Every single branch on this tree is kind of like a wire you can pose. They're very, very, very thin wires. They're just, even by touching it, you're sort of posing it as you go. Then you plug it into this little log base, and then you plug that into this snow base. As you can already see, there's little bits of green down there. That's because I think all of these branches are flocked, which is by far the most realistic looking way to do this tree, and that's why it does look extremely realistic. They put it in a transparent like plastic bag in the box, and there was already a bunch of flock in that because it sheds constantly. So if you're going to handle this thing, just be aware of the amount of flock that's going to be around. But it's cool, you know, just as a background implement, just as a little piece. I think it's nice. And to give you a better idea of scale, here it is alongside of Father Christmas. And you can see that it stands right at about 4.5 inches tall or so. We have this crown here, and it's just like a crown of holly and berries and things. And you actually get 2 of these. You get one for each of the alternative heads. Very simply, you just slide it on, and the way it's sculpted is kind of in a triangle formation so that it will fit Father Christmas's head. Here it is on the long-bearded head. I think it's a really nice look. And if you're wanting him to have more of that Ghost of Christmas Present kind of feel and also that more sagely feel, I think that this works really well. But I would also be careful. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a problem, but you always want to be careful when you've got an accessory like this, just kind of giving a lot of friction to a painted surface. I would feel a lot better about it if this were just flesh tone plastic up there on his forehead. But, you know, if you want to put this on a little more loosely like that, that's a good idea. But like I said, once you start applying more of that friction, you have to be aware that that might possibly come into that paint and rub against it. So just be aware of that. And here's how it looks on the more traditional Santa Claus kind of styled head. I think it's a great look either way. I'll return him to his more long-bearded look. I would be lying, though, if I said that I was going to be using these like all the time, because I'm really not. I think they're cool, but they don't really necessarily fit with what I want to do visually with this figure. And then the satchel piece. Now, you can, of course, lift this right off, and it doesn't come installed on the figure. Of course, all you got to do is pop the head off and the little hood, and then boom, you just put it over his shoulder, so it's not like it's a big deal. But I love the individual sculpting of each toy, and especially how it's all assembled together and kind of glued in there. One final accessory that Father Christmas includes is the sack of toys. Now this is kind of styled to look like a burlap sack, I suppose. Kind of has that rough texture to it, and I'm especially impressed by the tiny little rope here, especially the braided look to it. It definitely looks correct in scale. And none of this is kind of pre-sewn or any kind of tricks are going on. No, you're just legit have this little rope that you're tying around it. Little did I know that when opening this thing, because I hadn't looked at any reviews, that there would actually be goodies inside. That's right. Let me show you what I got in mine. Now, I have no idea if this is going to be something that different ones have different things in it or something like that. I really don't know. It is worth noting that there is just a little string over here that keeps the rope on it so that you don't lose it. But let me show you one of the things mine included was this Mythic Legion's helmet with the back armor right there. So really cool. I'm sure that you can pop that right on Santa's body, as funny as that might be. I also got this adorable little puppy. It's like a little toy or something. So I think that's cool. Mine had quite a bit of a paint blemish down there. It's not really a big deal because it's just white, so I can just give it a dot of white, but still, you know, it's a little bit of an inconvenience. Next up, got another helmet, this time with kind of a beak on it, so that's kind of funny. And finally, the best item of all is this rubber ducky. We're going to say it's a rubber ducky anyway. This is actually really well done. And there's kind of some brushing of some orange in there, just some highlights. Just cool, as if you're getting some gifts from Santa Claus, Father Christmas over here. So I really like that. So if you're a big fan of Mythic Legions, then you'll know what to expect for the articulation with this figure. But I'll go ahead and show you some of the things. His head is on a very large ball joint, so you're able to get quite a bit of range. They do pop off very easily, as you saw, especially with all the soft goods kind of pushing up against it. So making sure that it's really on there well will help you in that regard. And so you can see that you're able to look up, look down a little bit, but the beard is limiting it quite a bit. And of course, you can turn the head side to side. Now, with the arms, you can, of course, do what you can in the scope of this cloak. I think that this is probably about what you can get in terms of the arm going out on a hinge in there. You can bring it flush against the body pretty well. You can kind of just work with that to get it a little bit more if you want. Of course, he does have a swivel right here at the bicep. He does have a really good single joint, enough to get a very, very decent 90 degrees right there. He does have hinges at the hands. There is a rotation right there at the hand. Of course, the arm can go up pretty much all the way, and the cloak is loose-fitting enough to where nothing's really going to get in the way. At the diaphragm here, behind the beard, he does have kind of a crunch, but it's really almost immobile. The legs down here have quite a great range of motion. You can see that we do have an ability to kick out very, very well. There really isn't hardly anything inhibiting this. The loincloth can actually just come right out. It actually just came unpegged up here. So if you want that out of the way to do kicks, you totally can. You can, of course, do some split action, but unless you want the robe to completely come apart, this is about as far as you can go. He does have a thigh swivel. He also has a boot swivel. He does have a single jointed knee right here. Of course, it is a really good one, though, so you get a really decent amount of range, at least 90 degrees or better. And here at the ankle, you not only have rotation and some really good hinges, but you also have plenty of pivot, meaning that Father Christmas will be able to assume some very, very wide stances. And those really aren't a problem at all for him to maintain. Maybe the biggest consideration with articulation in terms of posing, when you have the giant like shepherd's hook in his hand and things, the drum hanging off his belt and the toys, he's sometimes a little front heavy. So every now and then, if you don't have it positioned right, some of the hinges and the ankles will kind of give and he'll want to come forward, but it's not really a big deal. Now, in terms of quality control, there's really not a whole lot of quality control concerns with this guy. Honestly, I'm surprised. I thought that there would be all sorts of different issues anytime you're dealing with soft goods, but I'm happy to say I only had a couple little things. One thing that I thought might have been a bigger deal than it was I had a couple of like dark spots. I had a kind of a gray spot here and a gray spot here in the white fur. Not really sure what it was necessarily, but I was a little concerned. But I just ended up taking a little bit of dish soap on one of my fingers, some water, and kind of just scrubbing it through the fabric and rinsing it out slightly, and then drying it off with a paper towel and letting it dry. And whatever it was, must have got in there at the factory somehow or another, but it came right out. So I'm happy to say that that was not a big deal. It could have been, so I'm glad it wasn't. Other than that, I didn't really have any kind of major issues aside from the little paint blemish on the bottom of the dog's chin. There's a lot of different comparisons, of course, that we can do to kind of give you an idea of the scale of this figure. If you're looking at your basic kind of 6-inch figures that are done in like that smaller kind of Hasbro 6-inch scale, then this is going to go pretty well with those. Like, say for instance, you have things like your Ghostbusters Plasma series, which, you know, here's my selfie series one, and you can see that me and Santa look like we're kind of chilling, having a good time. He's definitely a big dude, so I really like that. If you're wanting to go with more of your Mezco kind of 1/12 scale, because, you know, everybody has a slightly different interpretation of what that scale looks like, and still one of my favorite Christmas figures of all time, we have Holiday Gomez right here. He is a little bit taller than Father Christmas, and I think it's because the head is just so huge. If you need Alpha 5 from Power Rangers to learn the true meaning of Christmas all over again, just like in the old VHS tape, here he is alongside Father Christmas, hat not included. If you're ready for Santa Claus to meet Santa Claus, you can see he is a little bit bigger than John Hammond, Richard Attenborough, who played Santa Claus in the Miracle on 34th Street remake. If comparing him to a really tall G.I. Joe classified figure, which, you know, is a good half-inch or so larger than a lot of the others, it's Sergeant Slaughter, who is a little bit taller than Father Christmas here. If you're ready to integrate Father Christmas along with your Masters of the Universe Classics figures, which were gigantic, of course He-Man is a good bit bigger, the Filmation version, than Father Christmas. If you're ready to reenact the freakish Turtles Holiday Special, here it is. So you can see they're not too far off from being the same height. Here he is alongside the Red Power Ranger, and they work out to be exactly the right scale with one another. Again, it's very important to point out Father Christmas here, just like a lot of the Mythic Legions figures and Ghostbusters Plasma Series and Power Rangers Lightning Collection, are in that true 6-inch scale, not the 6.5-inch scale that we see a lot of 6-inch lines do. And finally, the most important comparison, and the one that I think we all knew was coming since my review of it last year, Krampus from the Figura Obscura line from the Four Horsemen. And since Krampus is kind of this more monstrous character, he's quite a bit bigger, actually. And I think it has a lot to do with his giant head. I think just from the shoulders, you wouldn't see as much of a difference, but he does have those giant hooves as well. So I definitely think it's appropriate that Krampus should be kind of larger than Father Christmas. And they make such great foils to each other. Of course, this year, the Four Horsemen are offering the new red version of Krampus. So that's something I would really like to get a hold of sometime. But I'm also really satisfied with the original black version. So I think these guys look great together, and it's going to be fun getting some pictures of them duking it out. It's easy to be pessimistic about Christmas. I don't think that it's a stretch to say that a lot of companies experience holiday figures and Christmas-themed items through kind of a lens of pessimism. There's a little bit of a wink and a nod that, hey, you know, we're not actually taking this very seriously. This is just to be funny, or to kind of put it down, or to, you know, to just kind of laugh at it a little. But this is not one of those figures. As a matter of fact, I feel like that this product takes itself way more seriously and with way more sincerity than most any holiday themed release I've ever seen from a toy company. Whenever the Horsemen developed this product, and especially whenever they wrote the bio for the character and decided on the accessories and the presentation, I think the order of the day was to make something that wasn't so skeptical. And this figure is definitely it. Rather than coming with a bunch of battle accessories and trying to, you know, cool him up and do all these different things or make it kind of a joke, there's a million different ways you can take Father Christmas or Santa Claus to try to make him a little more appealing to the most cynical generation you can imagine, mine. But they didn't do any of those things. Instead, they just gave us an honest and endearing version of this legend. I'm really happy that they stuck to their guns on this, because it would have been really easy to have gone in any of those directions. Instead, what they did was they gave us something that was truly representative of not only the legend of Father Christmas, but also the spirit of the season. And to have a figure less based on combat and more based on just giving and being ornate, and a beautiful image of something that I hold near and dear to my heart, and that means everything. So it's definitely with great appreciation that I commend the Four Horsemen for doing such a wonderful job. The Figura Obscura line has definitely been a very rewarding experience for me so far, and the Mythic Legions is not really something I collect. However, these Figura Obscura releases are definitely doing it for me, so I have nothing but good things to say when it comes to the work that the Horsemen are doing, and I'm extremely proud of them for their continual contributions to the action figure industry and their incredible artistry. With that being said, I would like to thank you for watching today. Of course, be sure to subscribe and like the video if you haven't already, because that really helps us out. Recently, we crossed over the 4,000 subscriber threshold a little while back, and I want to thank you for that, because it meant a lot to me. And thank you so much. You're really helping us to grow the channel and making it a big success, and that just means the world to us here at Fanboys Forever. And of course, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, Hopefully I get to make a couple more videos before Christmas rolls around, but of course if not, I really hope that you have a wonderful Christmas and a happy holiday season, or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever it is that you celebrate, or just a great day. And of course I want to wish just so many blessings for you and your family from the Lord this season. I wish health and happiness. The world is full of trouble. Just when we can distract ourselves with a fun little hobby like this, it's really great to be able to sit down and be able to discuss those kinds of things together here on this channel. So thank you, it means a lot. And as always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Merry Christmas, Fanboy out.